Hello and welcome to Piano Shack with me, Woody. Now then, I've been using the Astrolab here now for about 2 months and I've played it literally every single day. It's been my go-to keyboard just to power up, to practice piano, get some ideas down and flick through the sounds and just have a lot of fun. So I feel I'm pretty qualified now to talk about the pros and cons and share my thoughts with you on this really interesting instrument. I just want you to know that Arturia did send this one over to me at no charge so that I could check it out and make some videos to share with you. Keep that in mind. Although I am going to be brutally honest. Okay, the first thing that impressed me when I unboxed this was the build quality. I stand by that. It's absolutely fabulously put together. It's extremely hefty, solid. It weighs a lot for its size. The construction, the quality, the fit and finish is 100% top notch. Absolutely nothing to complain about there. Well done, Arturia. The keybed is a bit curious. It feels like a more compact action. The keys themselves are shorter. I can feel there's not a particularly long key pivot length either. The keys also do feel quite lightweight, rather hollow feeling as well. So on paper, all of that would say that it's probably not going to be a very nice action to play, but in reality it is. As I said, I've been using this to practice piano and I've adapted to it really well and it plays very nicely, even towards the back of the keys at the full board here. I've had no problem. Some of the keys or some of the songs I've been working in have been in the key of D flat, A flat, and it's actually been quite okay to play those chords. I shared a photograph of this on social media and one of the viewers commented that the keys are uneven, and he or she is absolutely correct. There is a slight differences in the height of the key. It's not something I noticed before, but after he said that, I can't help unseeing it. So that's a bit strange. One other slight criticism on the keybed, by the way, if you're playing long stretches like this, tenths or something, then I do find that the corners of the keys are just a little bit sharp and uncomfortable. I probably do prefer the Fatar action on my Nord Electro, but that doesn't have aftertouch. This one does, and it works really, really well. We'll just go through my observations here in no particular order. As I'm preparing music for videos, I'm going through the presets and auditioning them, and I want to save them quickly so that I can recall them as the cameras are rolling. It's been a bit of a pain to do here. Yes, there are favorite buttons here. You can store a set list or the sounds for a particular song, but the actual process to store them is so tedious, I can't be bothered to do it. I did talk to Arturia about it. They advised me to use an app, connect an app with Bluetooth and then do it on the app, or connect it to the computer and do it there in Analog Lab. I can't be asked to do either of those. I want to be able to do it from the keyboard, and that process needs to be streamlined. There's quite a lot of menu diving at the moment to save a preset to one of these locations. I'd love to see in the future in firmware perhaps some quick shift button combination. Just press where you want to save it, you're good to go. I find myself using instead the like feature. If you stumble across a preset you like, you just do a long press on the screen here, and that saves it to your, or it tags it, I suppose, so you can quickly call up your liked presets. I've been using that to save my favorite sounds instead. And then after doing one video, I've had to go in and unlike them all so that I can store a new set of liked presets. It's not ideal. Talking of auditioning presets, the category browser works really nicely. You can search by instruments or by the type of sound. All that works really nicely. I think there are even artist collections with homages to some famous sounds used by artists like Air, Michael Jackson, and so on. Those are fun to play with as well and sound really authentic. One observation that I made in my first video is that it does take a little while to load the sounds, even though the screen displays the next preset immediately. It takes maybe 2, 3, 4 seconds to load the sound before you can play it. But a nice thing is that the previous sound does not cut out whilst you're loading the new sound, so that's nice. I find that these quick macro knobs for the effects and the instrument parameters have worked really well, and for me, you're able to sculpt the sound in really interesting ways. It's a bit of a lucky dip. You never quite know what the parameters are going to adjust or what the knobs are going to adjust because they are just macros. But I've got really pleasing results, and you can save your edits as well, of course. There have been times when I, for example, wanted to adjust the depth of the filter envelope, and you just can't do that. So you just have to scroll on to the next preset and hope you find something that fits. Again, the idea being that you connect it to your PC and edit it there on Analog Lab if you want to do deeper editing than what you get with the macro knobs. I can't be bothered to do that, to be honest, so I'm just making do with the presets that we have on board. And there are so many presets anyway, so it has never been a problem for me to find another sound that fits what I have in mind for a particular song. Navigation is rather quirky though. You've got the dial here that you can spin, and then there's an up and down button that seem to work backwards to how I would expect, so I'm still trying to figure that out. For some sounds, polyphony has been a problem, yes. For the pianos that I've been playing the most, no problem at all. I've done quite a lot of intensive playing, big chords, lots of sustain pedal. The piano itself has never cut out, but if you're using a piano layer sound with perhaps a synth pad in the background, then I can quickly hear the synth pad running out of notes and cutting out, which can ruin a performance. And some of the instruments that are supposed to have 8-voice polyphony have a lot less. For example, I was playing a DX7 sound that was running out of poly just with 4 or 5 notes. It was a single layer sound, so I'm not sure what was going on there, but it ruined the patch. It doesn't have audio over USB, only MIDI, which I think is a real bummer. I mentioned on my first video how excited I was to see the audio inputs. It has a pair of stereo inputs, or it has a pair of inputs that are stereo with combo jacks, so you can even connect microphones, synths, external gear. So one of the first things I did was connect a drum machine to those inputs, and I was astonished when I couldn't hear any sound coming through the outputs of the Arturia, so some investigation was needed. It turns out that those audio inputs are only used for certain instruments and certain presets, like the vocoder, for example. Maybe that could be changed in the future, so you can always monitor and route to the outputs and listen on headphones to any device you have connected to the inputs for any instrument and for any preset, because that's one of the first things I tried to do and it failed. Although this has 1,000 or so presets, if you start filtering down by category, for example, instrument type, you do find that it is limited in some categories. For example, if you filter by some of the more obscure instruments like the synthy, there might only be 10 presets for that instrument, which isn't really enough. It's got a built-in looper, which in theory is a really nice feature. It's a MIDI looper, not an audio looper. And I have tried to use it because I love that kind of thing, but I found it to be a bit awkward to use as well, with quite a lot of menu diving. For example, you can't just ad hoc record a loop and then stop it whenever you want and have it repeat. You have to, in advance, program in the number of bars, for example. So you'll be doing quite a lot of configurations on the dial here before you can use the looper effectively. Okay, well, that seems like a lot of negative things, and I'm being critical and as honest with you as I possibly can be, which I hope is helpful if you're perhaps thinking about buying one of these. But there are a number of incredible positives as well. Firstly, obviously, is the sound of this thing. Yes, it contains Arturia's virtual and physically modelled instruments, and they all sound absolutely fabulous. One that has really surprised me is the acoustic piano. I've been immensely enjoying that. I've adapted to the sound of it now and the feel of it, and it is so expressive, pleasurable and enjoyable to play. Yeah, I just love the dynamics of that thing, and I've just been having a blast. It's really inspired me to play a lot more than I normally would. And the connection between the sound and the keyboard works really well for me for the piano sounds. And remember, the piano engine is physically modelled, so it responds a lot better than a sample library, I think. I'd go as far as saying that it's the most enjoyable acoustic piano I've ever played on any digital instrument ever. Less good, I think, is the electric pianos, the Rhodes and the Whirlies. I just really haven't found one that I like, and I haven't been able to dial in the parameters to my taste either. I'm just not getting the warmth or fatness or the bark and the bite that I'm looking for there. Organ sounds I think are superb actually. There is a really good organ emulation built into this, but don't think of this as a clone wheel like a Nord Electro or a Nord Stage, since you don't have access or easy access to all of the organ controls. You can like pull in and out drawbars by spinning knobs and switch the vibrato chorus on by turning knobs. But it's no substitute for the real organ controls. But it does sound nice, and the Leslie simulation sounds really good as well. So I think if you're not a drawbar player but just like to dial up or call up your favorite drawbar settings, then you can probably do it here and edit the sounds in advance using Analog Lab and then send them over and store them. That might work in a gig. There are some really beautiful piano and pad sounds on this as well, and like anything I've heard before, that augmented pianos sounds really wonderful as well. So there's lots of inspiring sounds here that can really captivate you for hours. And I get a kick from knowing that these synthesizer sounds on here are emulations of real vintage synthesizers like the Mini Moog, the Prophet, Roland Junos and Jupiters and so on. And I think they sound amazing and have a lot of character that is missing on some of the other stage keyboards. Keyboards like the Nord, Roland, Yamaha, they have fantastic synth sounds as well, Korg as well of course. But they're kind of generic. They sound more generic. They're great sounds, but they're kind of generic, whereas this one is specifically emulating specific vintage synths. And I think you can really hear that. Maybe it's psychological, but I really enjoy playing them nevertheless. And the effects as well, whilst we're talking about that, are phenomenal as well. Arturia's effects, some of the nicest and sweetest that I've ever heard. Especially that stereo reverb they have is just beautiful. Arturia have been very generous with the LEDs on the front panel. We have lovely collars around the encoders to indicate the parameter value, backlit buttons and so on. I would say though, in a bright room, it's a little bit hard to see the values. So that's pretty much what I had right now. In summary, I've had this for a couple of months now, and I have many other keyboards here in the shack as well, but this is the one I've been turning to every day for the last 2 months to practice piano on, which is something I wasn't expecting at all. But I love the fact it's compact, it doesn't take up much space. As I said before, the interaction between the keys and the piano sound is absolutely stunning, and it's just a joy to play. So that's what I've been doing here mostly. But when I dive into the synth presets as well, it's been a real blast and something I've enjoyed a lot. And the sounds are absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, it's way up there in the sound categories. Well, I hope you found that interesting and helpful. I know it was a lot of talking, random thoughts, rambling and so on. If you want to hear the instrument, don't fear, I have a playlist, Astrolab playlist, which has many all playing, no talking demos. So go check those out. Finally, thank you very much for subscribing. I appreciate it a lot. I'll see you again next time. Cheerio.